That's incredible. What
Whoa, my camera's whacked here.
Oh,
what's
what up,
going
Uncle
on,
Harry?
Harry?
Hey, there we
Are you
go.
are you
Hey.
still are you still are you still gramming out jars up there, Harry?
No, man, I finally finished up. I'm beat. Just got back and ate dinner.
This is the most
Oh, I'm
gangster
fucking back. I'm
OG
getting old,
in
man.
the
This
whole
shit's.
space. The guy owns his own company. He's got his own distro. He's been fighting the good fight for all the years, and he goes on live this afternoon, and he's just jarring. And like, I don't know if
I have
anybody
to
knows who
prove that I'm actually doing it because people don't believe me.
folks. RJ is the only one in this room that knows, but I can't stand jarring. It drives me like I just don't like it. And
I mean,
so
that's why I switched
I
to
don't like
DJ
it, but
out here.
I don't trust many people to do it for me either. You know, that's the other thing because your name's on there. One little fucking, you know, and then the other thing, I mean, he knows immediately. But the reality also is now we have to deal with fucking microbiology tests and stuff. And if I have the right people, and my wife is one of them, by the way. I mean, she's been making stuff with me forever. But if it's not her and it's not one of two other people, maybe I just don't trust it. So just the way it goes.
Yeah, that's called micromanaging. I have an extreme problem with that shit. I'd rather just do it myself than try to ask people for help.
Well, there's certain things that I still to this day don't trust. Like I also do an ethanol extract, and I don't let anybody do that besides me. And a lot of other things I let people do, definitely, but not that. Formulating and the extractions. Not yet. I mean, I don't, I don't have a 300 person company or anything either. So, uh,
what is it about
it's
the
not,
ethanol pull, Harry? Is it knowing
what
like
is
a
it
temp?
about it?
Yeah, like is it like a feel? Is it like a temperature? Are you like watching something? Are you looking at a color? Is it like what is it?
It's all the above. I mean, to a certain extent, you know your temperature and timing, but every flower's different. And like you guys were just talking about, it really depends. Like if you can do a cold dry on something and then put it in the freezer at -20, you're good, but not many people have that much storage is the bottom line. So, you know, if you're putting it on a shelf, then it's going to be different every time you extract it for, its life, and then you got to really just judge it. So there is a certain amount of exactness to it, and then you got to be there in case the color change or something weird happens. So
Yeah, no, that
there's
makes sense.
also there's also the removal of the ethanol. We don't do it in the conventional way, like with falling film or rotovape, because that basically ruins the extract. So, there is a bit of I have some equipment that's definitely weird compared to the norm, and I just try to be there to make sure that certain phases of it I'm around. I have notifications and shit like that, but you got to be there to make sure it's right. My ethanol extraction is 100% acidic when it's done. We do a cold removal of the ethanol.
And you just
which is
dropped you just dropped rosin. Was it today or when did you drop your rosin?
well,
That French
we're
press.
jarring it all up. Yeah, it's getting, so we move it over to our distro from manufacturing, which is in the same building. It's just a different room. And tomorrow it'll get sampled.
That's awesome.
And our lab is pretty quick, so by Monday we should be able to hit the market with those two, and then we'll see. I mean, I did two. We'll see. We're gonna get up and try to do a third before they get there. We thought we'd get all three done, but we're doing other shit besides gramming. So there's only 6 of us now. I've had up to 20 people in the shop, but the market blows, so we're lean.
What type of ethanol extraction machine do you have?
I use a A cup.
Okay.
I use a cup, but it's, I have the full jacket going with cryothermic on it. So I had to change some bearings and a couple things because the way it came stock, you could only go to -40, So I had to do a few things to get it a little bit further.
What do you use for your recovery?
I have a special piece of equipment that I had two of them now that I had made in the UK by a pharmaceutical equipment company, and that's how I'm able to do the cold recovery. That's IP, my friend.
That's
about $200,000 worth of intellectual property, but
that's dope.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, everybody, a lot of people shy away from ethanol except for crude and stuff because they don't know how to separate it without losing all the terpenes and metabolites.
It's true.
And by the way, my theory is, because it would have been interesting to talk to a lot of people because Hashmakers are very touchy-feely by nature, but I'm also extremely data-driven. And so, my harvesting method, I use, if you're harvesting for hash, I don't give a shit what the flower looks like. It's all about the trichomes, and I test the shit out of it in succession. Because I have very close relationships with labs and I can get really fast turnarounds. I've been dealing with labs since they started, even before they started. So I can get very fast turnarounds. So I do successive testing as well as visual. And, it is about the resin. And of course it's subjective. That's the funny part. You look for the signs, people go touchy-feely, but it's subjective. You go by feeling and what the Hashmaker wants to express, I mean, it's easy to say this or that, but the reality is it really is subjective to a certain point, And so I have my own, wants and needs for watching the terpenes ramp up and starting to see the degradation of the cannabinoids. And somebody was talking about the aging, in the full-term plants and so on. And what that really is you're losing metabolites, right? So the metabolites are what processes everything in your body and makes all these various compounds hyper available. And that's what's really special about a true full spectrum extract or smoking directly from the plant. But as it starts to degrade and the plant starts to die, that's basically what happens. Right, and starts to degrade, and certain things happen, and one of the things is loss of certain metabolites, and that just blows everything to hell, basically. All the availability and the stability of all these various compounds. And again, it's subjective. Some people prefer that. I know old-timers, they let it go forever so that they get tons of totally denatured and fully converted compounds, and it puts them into a coma, To each his own, right? That's the beauty of the plant. You can get what you want out of it. Some people like it to be a cup of coffee. Some people like sedative. Some people like in between. You can get anything out of the plant. It's amazing. Love the plant.
Harry, you said on our show that cryoethanol is the only true experience of full spectrum cannabis oil. And I think that's not something that a lot of people hear or have wrapped their head around. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, people don't, everybody's got an opinion on this, of course, but in my opinion, I mean, especially when it comes to medical efficacy, all other forms of extraction cause too much disruption and separation of molecular chains and too much separation of a lot of compounds, including metabolites, that create these high efficacies and create the real big entourage effect. And you can only get that in certain ways. A solventless extract, which is near and dear to my heart, in general, what we're doing is separating just stipple-capitate heads, which is not the full spectrum of the plant, what's available, right? So right there, you're getting the full spectrum of what's in the heads, but not the whole plant of what's available on the plant surface, the bulbous trichomes and all the various trichomes that are available really have a bunch of interesting compounds that are extremely useful. And with ethanol, it's just whoosh. Now, when it comes to hydrocarbons, you guys are talking about intentional crashing. It crashes naturally, right? And so, boom, you don't have a full spectrum anymore. I don't care what you're saying, because the molecular bonds are broken and you're intentionally creating your own Franken oil, basically, which is fine. It's beautiful. It tastes great, but it's no longer a full spectrum in a traditional or medical sense. So
I would agree.
it's just a matter of what your actual definition of what you're trying to
you'd
define.
agree.
Well, like, it's true. Like I said on the show, like we just had, you know what I mean? Like, we're filtering, we're separating things. Like, it's no longer a full spectrum. It's a broad spectrum,
Correct.
but it's no longer a full spectrum. So, like, that's the thing. Like FSE, it's more like BSE, like legit, right? So, like, it's these kind of like hype salesmanship marketing terms that are catching on to describe a product when it's kind of a misnomer, right? Absolutely.
It's true, and it really depends on what you're going for. A lot of what I talk about has to do with medicinal use, oral use. Of course, you definitely get those benefits if you're vaporizing it or dabbing it, but in general, it depends on what you're going for. And when you're dabbing, you're looking for certain highs, certain effects, daytime, nighttime. When it comes to medical efficacy, it's really got to be the same every single time, And you also need the broadest efficacy, and in our case, we try to hit the most amount of people with the biggest effect, So you don't see when they do real bench studies and botanicals and so on, you don't see people using any other method. People don't do CO2 extracts and so on, and in real studies in general, it's all ethanolic or pure separations, real sieving, dry sieving, like organic chemistry 101. That's what you see, because it's something that's a baseline that you can trust. It's a real fingerprint of a good representation of this botanical that you're studying. So,
Point Dabtronicus. He's like, he's actually been dropping some great points the whole show, or the whole chat here. Make live resin
blind.
Be good. You know what I mean? And then he was asking you about recovery rates at one point as well, if you would speak on that at all.
For ethanol?
For your ethanol.
For my ethanol now, okay, just so you know, I started out at 100% loss. I evaporated 100% into the air because I didn't have real equipment, and it took me years of doing it by hand in full evaporation to figure out the process that I needed to do, and that was how I was able to create, a multi-step equipment process. So now my process is actually only 3 steps. The cup is the beginning. I have a filtration process in the middle, and then the recovery, basically, which is the full finish, and you end up with the acidic form. So to answer your question, now I get a 97% recovery rate of the ethanol.
Like how quickly would you say you can recover about 100 gallons? Yeah.
100 gallons? Well, just to give you an idea, I can do 30 to 40 pounds in about 10 gallons of ethanol. Through the closed loop system that I use, and keeping everything cryo the whole time, the way I have it set up, including the ethanol and the jacket and so on. So that makes a big difference. There's very little loss to the material when it's that cold, and the material's that cold. That's the other thing. Preparation. So 100 gallons, that would give me like 300-400 pounds. Right, which I generally don't do in one sitting, because I don't extract like a lot of people do. I don't use shake. I use just top flowers,
right?
The best of the best. So I don't need to do as much because there's a whole lot of resin, and so my equipment, I can recover a couple liters at a time of oil, and then I need to put in a new vessel to keep recovering, basically.
Okay.
So it's kind of unusual equipment from what people are normally doing. It has a centrifuge and multiple chambers of vacuum, and there's pressure and vacuum because otherwise you're going to lose the volatiles.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like super cool tech.
Yeah, I mean it's by today's standards, it's a little antiquated actually in terms of high-end pharmaceutical sophistication, but
One of the
I keep
companies,
her running. I keep
one of the
old
companies I
Betsy
used
running.
to work with was True Steel. Have you heard of them?
True steel for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I used to build their machines, and that's where I learned a lot about ethanol recovery and ethanol extraction. I had never even thought of the process or even seen it actually in action. So it's pretty cool to be able to build those machines. Like ones would recover 15 gallons an hour. Another one they have is a 30 gallons. I think they have a 100-gallon, and they have a 300-gallon for hemp extraction.
Mm-hmm. See,
300
that's
gallons
very
is the size of
hot.
a house.
See, you're doing it very warm when you're doing that. So
Yeah.
I have a big still. I have a 20-pound, basically a 20-gallon at a time still with an auto feed. And so I don't use it anymore. It's got this, I had to run they're giant copper Tesla condensers, and I had to have these giant cooled water tanks that were circulating. It was crazy, but that could do about 10 gallons an hour, but it was too warm. This will do it cold. And so that's why I've refined the front end process to make the ethanol, because ethanol you can put so much resin in. There's a, like, I think I forgot what show now, somebody was talking about, there's a certain volume of hash that you can put in water. There's a certain volume you can put in anything, and ethanol is, you can put a lot in there. You can put like a pound per gallon at least, without even thinking about it.
Whoa.
So 10 gallons.
Using what?
So,
Sorry,
what's that?
Dabtronic is here. We recover 120 gallons in 20 to 30 minutes at 40 C.
Right, at 40 C, exactly. So I can do it below room temperature. And that's the special. Like, I can raise the temperature and get, 10, 20, 30 gallons an hour. But I can also lower the temperature, which most people can't do, and keep it as acid. And then I choose to decarboxylate it. That's the big difference. And I'm not trying to make something to make distillate out of. That's the main thing. I'm not just making really high quality crude oil. I'm making a full spectrum extract for medicine. So if I needed to do that, I could, like I said, I have this giant still that I can just rip alcohol with if I just need a full spectrum extract without all the cannabinoids. I mean, without all the terpenes.
Yeah.
And all the flavonoids. It just goes for
Kind
sure.
of like the spot that I was working at recently at a legal lab facility out here in California. They're making ethanol extracted shatter, and which it was new to me, and super terpless, no flavonoids, nothing, because they're going at high heat. I would imagine, especially they're decarboning the fuck out of it.
It looks beautiful though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Looks fucking beautiful.
It doesn't taste like anything though.
You have to employ some
I
crazy
made some good shatter back in the day with ethanol with this tech, but if you actually retain the terps, it's like greasy shatter. You can kind of bend it really slowly and then really fast, and it'll snap, but it's not like psh. It's not like a window.
Yeah.
I don't know what you'd call that consistency. And then it'll leave your fingerprint in it because there's still a lot of terpenes and flavonoids and stuff.
That'd be really cool. I know a lot of ethanol extractors that do not preserve the terpenes, and if they could figure out how, maybe they're just not privy to it, or they just don't care. But
they don't care. It's crude. I mean, most of it are, they just want to run it through a short path or a thin film and just make some pretty oil, and that's, or they're, and a lot of people are buying these flavorings and terpenes and so on to add back.
Yeah.
True terpenes has every flavor imaginable.
There was
it's disgusting, but
there's a small scale processor that you and I know based in Kelowna that was trying or getting set up based on room temperature ethanol extraction and saying that they're able to save all the terpenes. Can you talk anything about that, or do you know who I'm talking about? I don't want to go into.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not going to speak on that.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
Yeah, because there's some
people
like,
that do it. I mean,
yeah,
for
you
sure.
know,
well,
it just takes longer, and most people, especially if you're dealing with production and money and bean counters and chads, I mean, you know, they don't know any different. It's insane. I mean, in the blink of an eye, all of a sudden everything was distillate. It's like, what the hell happened? And now it used to be a joke, hot dog water, like you guys were saying, right? And now people have sort of accepted it. You know, it's just the norm. Yeah, buy edibles, it's got distillate. It's like, fuck that.
but I mean, what's happened in Canada is that, and it's so interesting to watch the different markets, because in some ways we're very far behind, and in some ways we're a little bit advanced and reactionary, where, large scale companies like the one that RJ
Look at
works
that.
for, and others. Oh yeah, that's nice. That's
Ooh,
yeah.
Beauty.
there you
Large
go.
scale companies
Jamaroo.
have cornered the distillate and
Mm.
botanical terpene market, and so in a pen, and so smaller scale cultivators are not cultivators, processors are realizing that they need to create new unique product offerings in pen form that are not a
Marmalade.
distillate. But yeah, that looks delicious, Rackhams. Did you just
It
make
looks
that?
like orange marmalade.
What is that?
This is the GMO.
Color of the resin doesn't mean shit, man. That's the other thing. It's terpenes and flavonoids.
And
Sometimes it's
keratin.
clear. Sometimes it's clear and flavorful as hell, but usually that's premature. But sometimes it's mature. And like this stuff I was packing today is a pretty dark amber.
Yeah,
But I let my stuff get mature
yeah.
and then take it. I don't.
We were
I don't know.
just talking
I'm a
about that.
weirdo. What can I tell you?
Yeah, this
I like
stuff
my
that
house
I was just
mature.
showing was dried for 2 weeks and cured for 2.5 weeks before I watched it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I'd love to
create
feel how that
color.
hits.
pH creates color. Oxidization and age create color. Everything creates color.
Now, the pH at the point of harvest, or pH throughout the lifespan of the life cycle of the plant.
So pH,
We're
Well,
talking about
that's
pH
like
after the fact.
refined. That's more like refined oils.
Okay.
there's
So like,
pH and there's pH, though. A lot of people mistake what pH is. It's potential hydrogen. And so when you're dealing with a living extract, that means something slightly different. Just like Kangen water, right, is living water. It has these floating hydrogen molecules in it. So
I have one of those.
it can mean different things, but it definitely is exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, pH throughout the process,
Mm-hmm.
especially for hydrocarbons. And then distillation, the pH of the input resin going into distillation can cause all kinds of different isomerizations. So
Yuck.
that's how
It's pretty amazing the waste that comes out of distillation. It's disgusting, a lot of it. It stinks. It's crazy.
Smurf diamonds.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting, what with the comment that was made by Alex, the pigment specialist on the show, with chlorophyll, and even same as hemoglobin or blood, and where chlorophyll will degrade into like from a green into a yellow, and like that same thing is happening with these fats and keratins and all these things in the gland of the of that trichome. Like those ratios, like outside of terpenes, are what are influencing. Like when you're doing a pheno hunt and you run your 10 pack or whatever you run, and you're washing individual phenos, and you're fresh pressing those out, you're dabbing the fresh press, noticing the different nuances, and then seeing them cure out and being like either slightly nuanced different or dramatically different colors. That's like, and you go, oh well, that's just the terp profile. There's a lot more than terps going on. And what we're realizing is, taking out those colors and removing those colors, whether by solventless or solvent methodologies, not only affect the way that these things look, but the way that they're tasting. And that's what's kind of crazy, where we always had a separation. Like I remember when bro, like 3 years ago, it was flavonoids were for color, and they had nothing to do with anything else but that. And so I think that it's super dope that we're kind of opening it up, and at least letting our community understand there's a whole hell of a lot more going on.
There's so much going on that we don't know what the hell's going on. There's a lot more that we don't know than we do know at this point, I feel like,
I mean,
and a lot of
what
it
are
has
we
to
at
do
now?
with they weren't allowing real research. So
What are we at now? We're at like 80, 70, 80, 90 cannabinoids out of like hundreds.
hmm
Is that
Oh
about right?
yeah,
and
yeah,
they
no,
still don't
probably
test
more.
for them, and that's a big problem. A lot of we are touchy feely because we don't have proper testing, and there's a lot of cannabinoids that are very powerful that could be present. And if you judge weed by THC value alone, you're going to miss that, definitely.
Well, I mean, most big commercial uh, units are going to be judging by a single metric alone, yield and yield of that specific cannabinoid or a terpene that they're looking to grow and harvest. And so, that's the direction breeding is going to go. And it's going to be left for, the stewards of the plant and true connoisseurs to curate those experiences. But, we've seen it in the California market where it's taken a long time to even hint that it's heading in a direction of an informed consumer. And some would argue it's still not even heading in that direction. And they've had 7 years to kick this can down the road, or a lot longer than that. And in Canada, we've got no end in sight, where, it's a race to 35%, because apparently that's how we're going to garner the highest price per gram. And very few individuals, like people on this panel or even in this room, are involved in the legal Canadian space. So it creates a bit of an issue for guys like RJ and myself, trying to affect change.
Yeah, well, I mean, it ruined the California market, and it's just completely ignorant because, I mean, what are they going to do when they start testing for THCP and people start breeding for that? Are they going to all of a sudden change cannabinoids that they're looking for, because
Hmm.
that's supposed to be up to 300 times more intoxicating?
Yeah.
And as soon as they figure out what strains, because a lot of these strains that test low in THC but blow your doors off probably have something in them like that we're not aware of. So we're just going to be chasing, it's silly, just chasing cannabinoids. It's what it
Chasing
seems like we're going to do.
chasing bankers pitch decks. And like in Canada, like this year and the last 12 months has been the year of the solventless go public. Like you could like forget about trying to raise capital and and go public in Canada anymore on a cultivation. But this whole, you pitch solventless extraction to a business guy over dinner, and oh my goodness, you don't say, a couple of garbage cans and some bags. You don't say, we're boys, we're gonna be rich. We're gonna do this all over again. These fucking idiots. And so there was this boom of like, oh, now there's these solventless houses. And I think that we're gonna see ultimately the majority of them fail. But they looked at it from an outsider and went, okay, well, we've got enough money to buy some nice bags, a washroom, maybe even a couple ospreys, and there's all this material that we can wash and create into hash. But what they didn't anticipate is that the best outcome that qualified hash makers could do, putting that quality level of material through the processes that they were given, which is needed to be at a commercial scale, is producing a product that isn't moving fast enough for them to keep up with their business model. Because what's in demand is something much higher quality, and it's not being accessed, and not their fault. But if they knew what to look for, they would have been slower to get into the market. Like all the really long in the tooth traditional guys have been really slow and just kind of like moved really slow and deliberately and haven't fully even transitioned. And nobody's discounting them or penalizing them or in fact, I'm commending them, and I think that they made a better strategic decision staying out and watching this this just fuckery unfold and knowing better when and how to enter, because it's just been a shit show. And so I think that there's a ton of lessons to be learned. Like Canada didn't learn shit or didn't look, they consulted Colorado and they took the worst stuff from Colorado, and then they didn't look at any other states. They didn't have cannabis people writing this legislation. They transferred it from tobacco. It was issues. But my point is not being all about Canada, but there's so many things that can be learned from each legalization example of what didn't work, but that nobody wants to learn. And
they don't put it all together, dude.
No,
because none of them actually understand the industry either. So, they're just, it's like going to a museum for them. Ooh, look at this. And they don't retain anything. And it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I've dealt with a lot of different officials to deal with licensure and stuff. And it's scary how clueless they are and what they're looking for and what they're concerned with and what they create such a turmoil in your life over, compared to what they really should be looking for in the market, such as, first of all, 35% weed. Come on, I don't even want to get into that, but it's just lab cheating, and all the labs that were refused
get into it, Harry. Then is it lab cheating? Is 35% weed even possible? What's your opinion?
My opinion is that people that actually do large samplings and have been doing this for a long time don't believe that that's actually, physically possible to have a third of the biomass, be a converted molecule of Delta 9. And so, it's a manipulation of moisture values, and they put a slightly less amount, of solvent in there, and boom, it goes up 10%, 12%. Every lab has their own SOP, and there's no overall SOP for the state of California currently, and there's no real, enforcement. And so, like I was going to say, basically all the labs that refused to cheat literally went out of business. And so there's only a handful of labs left in the state of California, really, in the big scale of things. And and so it's scary. It's scary. There are still a few good ones. Don't take that literally, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. There's been a lot of people go down because if you refuse to fudge the values, you lose that customer. And they're not just going to go for their COAs to somebody else. Their business is gone. So one by one they leave if you're not willing to boost your values. And it's kind of a known thing. It's just I don't know why, it doesn't get more public, and I really don't know why the regulators aren't doing anything about it at this point. I can't explain that. And, they're building a state lab. And from what I understand, the people that'll be running that aren't even qualified to create an ISO certified lab. So how are they going to go judge other ISO certified labs? I don't know. It seems like we're not going to get there quickly, but I hope I'm wrong.
Okay, hold on. Davitronicus, bro, I feel like I've read your shit on Future before. I feel like I know this name. Since it's an externally produced compound, the plant theoretically can just keep making more. And I'm assuming he's meaning THC. So I want, fuck, can you unpack that? How, should I just jump off so he can unpack that? What do you fucking mean, bro?
Well, I think what he's saying is it could theoretically excrete enough to get those values, but the reality is the weight is the weight. I guess if you could potentially, and we haven't seen it, if you bred just the right plant that barely had any biomass and just excreted tons of trichomes all over themselves, it probably is possible, maybe, but
Could it be to the
not
point where
currently.
you're getting like only like a micron size, only getting like 150, 140 micron heads and bigger, like 220s, 190s, and that's where it's holding that weight?
I don't know. I mean, if you do solvent extract, right, you can actually see what happens. I mean, solventless, obviously, something that dumps, something that doesn't. But solvent doesn't, you can't hide from solvent. And, you know, I've been working with the plant for long enough and done enough extracts to know, and seeing the test results of those extracts. And some of those extracts were just like ridiculously long. There's nothing left on the plant. So,
Okay.
you know, I have yet to, I hope somebody can prove me wrong, but I just don't believe it personally, you know.
I understand. Sorry, I'm jumping back to these comments. He said, think of it like your hair. You can continuously grow it out. What's up, Bert? So does that mean like the longer that I grow the plant, the higher THC I'm going to get? Like that doesn't make
The
much
plant's
sense.
going to start to die
Yeah, like there's going to be a point of diminishing
or
return.
rot.
Like,
Yeah, it has a life cycle, right?
I mean, I think that there's a theory there. You know, it's theoretical. I don't know how soon the plant can start excreting THCA, but
Well, that was going to be my next question, the conversion of the THCA to THC, which is what the lab would pronounce as its percentage, is the THC, right? Not then are they including the acid form in that percentage?
It's what they're looking at is total THC after conversion, so it's THCA times 0.8777.
Okay.
Approximately.
Interesting.
Well, that's what we have to show, because that's the only thing anybody cares about, because it's an intoxicant, you know. God forbid we get euphoria, right? It's a terrible thing.
I'm looking for that entourage. That's all I'm after.
I agree, and that's why it's so, you know, the solventless is fun, because, you know, you get to try so many different flavors fairly easily. I love it. I love it.
Well, I'm out of here, guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna dump.
I'm ripping too.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
It was very nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Absolutely.
All right. See you guys around.
Tuning in. Peace.